Wait, sorry. I was about to move forward and one of these cards pulled me back. What I am looking at right now is someone who has been through something, through it, past it, out the other side, and they do not fully know what they are carrying yet. They do not know what survived, what is still there, what they built without meaning to, just by staying, just by not putting down the things that mattered when everything else became hard to hold. And there is something I keep circling in what just came out. By the end of this reading, I am going to name exactly what Saturn in Pisces has been testing in you. Not in general terms, not the version that applies to everyone, your specific thing. And when I name it, you are going to feel something land in your chest that explains why the last several months had the texture they did. Stay with me. Okay, so let me tell you what has been happening astrologically. Simple version, because it makes everything else make immediate sense. Saturn is the planet of what is real versus what only looked real. That is its whole job. Not punishment, not obstacles, just reality check, final and permanent. Saturn arrives somewhere in your chart and it presses on every structure in that area until it knows which ones are load-bearing and which ones were held up by air and momentum and the particular way you had arranged yourself to avoid finding out. Right now, Saturn is in Pisces and it is retrograde, moving backward through that sign, which means it has returned to re-examine territory it already walked. Coming back through rooms to see what it missed, what it could not fully assess the first time because you were still in motion, still adjusting, still holding things in the way people hold things when they are not ready to find out what stays. Here is what Pisces specifically does to a Saturn audit. Saturn in Pisces does not strip what is impractical. It strips what is not true. The fog that kept certain things feeling possible lifts. The blurring that allowed you to half believe things you did not fully believe lifts. The particular kindness you had been extending to situations that did not deserve it. That lifts too. Not dramatically, the way morning lifts darkness. You do not notice the exact moment it changes. You just look up one day and things are clear in a way they were not. And the things that are still there when the fog lifts, those things are the real ones. And let me tell you what the audit has been stripping. Because I think there is a version of the last several months that you have been explaining to yourself that is not the full picture. The first thing it stripped is the relationship with time. Not your schedule, not your routines, the version of yourself you had been living slightly ahead of, the self you were in the process of becoming, who you referenced when you made decisions. The version that was almost here, that you were almost ready to fully inhabit, that you kept running small amounts of your real life toward in advance. Saturn in Pisces removed the habit of living there. Not cruelly, by simply making the present moment the only available location. Something happened in the last year that required you to be here. Fully here. Not in what was coming or what had already passed, but in the specific Tuesday of it, the specific weight of a particular kind of tiredness, the specific way a room felt at a time of day when you would normally have been somewhere in your head rather than in the room. That is what the audit took first, the ability to live in the almost. For some of you, this felt like loss. For some, it felt like relief. For most of you, it felt like both at different points in the same day. The second thing it stripped is the version of several situations you had been being fair to. You are someone who gives situations the benefit of the doubt. Not because you are naive, because you understand that things are complicated, that people are complicated, that the story is rarely as clean as the most honest version of your reaction would suggest. And so you held space. You were fair. You waited. You extended time and attention and good faith to situations that had not yet fully revealed what they were. Saturn in Pisces is not fair in this way. Saturn in Pisces is accurate. And the accurate version of several situations arrived during the last several months without asking your permission. Not as betrayal. The soft version of this is what I am seeing for you. Not as someone doing something to you, but as simple clarity. The fog lifted. The thing you had been being fair to simply became visible, without drama, without a confrontation or a revelation. Just, there it is. That is what that was. And you had to decide what to do with seeing clearly, without anything having technically happened, without a moment you could point to, without an explanation that did not sound from the outside slightly excessive. The audit is not interested in explanations that work from the outside. It is interested in whether you know what you know. The third thing it stripped is the energy you had been spending on managing perception. I need to be precise here because I keep almost saying too much about this one. There is a specific version of presenting yourself, not performing, not lying, just the particular arrangement of which parts of you come forward in which context that you had gotten very good at. That took energy, a consistent, daily, slightly below conscious amount of energy directed at making sure certain things about you landed in a certain way for certain people, and Saturn in Pisces removed your investment in the result, not your self-awareness, not your ability to read a room, just your care about whether the arrangement worked. And what I find I need to finish this thought before I lose it. What I find almost poignant about that is the removal happened before you noticed it. You were already doing it differently before you had a name for the change. One day, you were in a situation where you would previously have been arranging yourself and you just were not. You were just there, present and unmanaged, and completely unconcerned with the version of you that was landing. That was not carelessness. That was the audit finishing its work on that particular structure. Because I just described what got stripped. And what I am about to say is the opposite. The knowing survived. I am going to come back to that. But I want to say it now because I have been holding it since the cards landed and I keep almost naming it and then pulling back because I want to describe it in a way that actually lands. What came through this audit intact, I will say it simply, is your knowing. The specific, private, bodily sense of what is true that has been running underneath everything. Underneath the fair interpretation. Underneath the managed presentation. Underneath the years of extending good faith to situations that were still developing, the knowing was there this whole time. Give me a few minutes. I want to describe exactly what that means before we close. And because first, I need to say something about the audit itself. The three things I just named, the living in the almost, the fair interpretation, the managed perception, those are not failures. They were not mistakes you made. They were the shapes that living inside a long, uncertain season takes. They are what people do when the ground is not entirely steady. And staying somewhat protected from what you fully know feels more survivable than arriving at it all at once. The audit does not judge any of that. It just removes it when it is no longer necessary. When the season has moved far enough that the protection is more costly than the clarity it was preventing. And here is what changes everything about how I want to describe the next part. What Saturn strips during an audit, the shapes of surviving, those are not the real you. They were temporary structures you built around the real you while the ground was unsteady. Useful, necessary, real in their own right, and now removed. What the audit reveals is what was underneath them the whole time. Your knowing, Not your confidence, not your certainty that things will work out. Something quieter and more durable than either of those. You have always known. You knew before you had evidence. You knew before you could articulate it. You knew in rooms where everyone else around you appeared not to know. And you second-guessed it because you were the only one. And you extended fairness to the situation because the knowing felt presumptuous. It was not presumptuous. It was accurate. And what this audit has done, what this long, heavy, fog-lifting season has actually built while it appeared to be taking things away, is show you that the knowing held under all of it. Under the last several months of being fully present in the Tuesday of it, of having situations become accurate without your permission, of your investment in managed presentation quietly dissolving, underneath all of that, the knowing did not waver. That is the thing that came through intact. I told you I would name it, and that is it. That is what Saturn in Pisces has been testing, not your resilience, not your ability to cope or adjust or rebuild, your knowing. Whether the specific private internal sense of what is true that you came into this season carrying would still be the same knowing at the end of it. Whether the audit would strip it along with everything else, or whether it was load-bearing in the way that only the real things are load-bearing. It was load-bearing. And now I want to talk about someone who has been watching this, because there is someone in your life, not an enemy. This is the soft reading, no karma arc, no person who wronged you. Someone close enough to have watched the last several months happen to you, a friend, a person you are near, someone who has been in enough proximity to see the particular texture of what this season looked like from the outside. And what I am getting for this person is something I find, I keep almost saying this. There is an observation they have been carrying, not said aloud, possibly because they were not sure you wanted it named, possibly because they were still figuring out how to say it accurately without it sounding like too much. Here is what the observation looks like from where I am standing. They have been watching you go through something that should have produced a different outcome, should have made you harder or more closed, more defended, less curious about difficult things, less yourself, in the specific way that difficult seasons tend to make people less themselves. And you are still you. And they do not know what to do with that. Not admiration exactly, though it includes admiration. Something more uncomfortable and more specific than admiration. The feeling of watching a person stay accurate under conditions specifically arranged to make accuracy difficult. The feeling of watching something hold that a reasonable person would have expected to bend. It makes them quiet in a particular way sometimes, not sad quiet. The quiet of someone sitting with an observation they have not finished forming yet. You have probably caught it on their face without being able to name what it was. A moment just before they knew you were looking, where something was sitting in them that had no casual form. That is what was sitting there. They are still working out how to say it. You will probably not hear the full version directly. But it is there, and it is more generous and more specific than you know, and it has been there for a while. Now the scene, I want you to think about the last few weeks. Not the last year, the last few weeks. And I want you to find a specific morning. Early, before anyone else in the house was moving, or before the first thing of the day had started. You were standing in your kitchen. The light was the particular quality it is at that hour, not bright yet, still gray at the edges. You were doing something ordinary, waiting for something to heat, or just standing there for a moment before the day began, and something settled in you. Not dramatically, no music, Nothing happened externally, just a feeling that arrived quietly. The way things arrive when you are not performing anything for anyone. And it was something very close to, I know what I know. Not relief, not triumph, not even peace exactly, just a quiet and complete sense of your own accuracy, of the knowing still being there exactly where you left it. That moment was the end of the audit, not the end of Saturn in Pisces, the end of the specific question Saturn was asking you, because it had the answer. The knowing survived. The thing that cannot be stripped because it is not a structure built on top of you, but the actual substance of you, that thing is still there. And you knew it in a kitchen at the gray end of an early morning before the day had started, standing still for 30 seconds in the particular silence of a house that had not woken up yet. Saturn does not give you what it takes. It shows you what was real all along. One thing I want to say before we close. The awe that the person watching you has been sitting with, I think you have not turned it toward yourself yet. Because from the inside, it does not feel like anything. It feels like continuing. It feels like Tuesday. It feels like getting through the particular day in front of you, using what you have available, which does not feel like strength from the inside. It just feels like what you do. But from the outside, it is something quite different. And I want you to consider for a minute, not permanently, just for a minute, that both of those things are true at the same time. That what felt like Tuesday from the inside looked like something worth sitting with from the outside. You do not need to make a statement about it. You do not need to claim it or announce it. You just need to know it is there. The knowing survived. That is what this season was testing. That is what is still standing. And my personal readings are open right now. The link is in the description. What I do in a session is different from what you just watched. This video is collective. What I do for you personally is sit with your specific energy, pull cards for your actual situation, and layer in your natal chart, your houses, your placements, the exact degree Saturn is pressing on in your life right now, so that nothing I say is general. Every card I pull, every astrological layer I add is aimed at you, at your specific questions. The things actually weighing on you, your relationship, your career, what you are supposed to be doing, what that person means, whether this situation is worth staying in. You send me up to 10 questions and I go through every single one. You get a 30-minute recorded video, yours to keep. And alongside it, a custom PDF designed specifically for you, your cards, your placements, your key insights laid out clearly so you can come back to the parts that matter without having to find them again. Something you can actually hold on to. Read on a Tuesday when you need to remember what you know. For this Saturn in Pisces period specifically, I want to look at where Saturn sits in your natal chart, what the retrograde has been pressing on in your specific life, and what the direct phase in November is building toward. Because what just surfaced in you is not the end of the story. It is the material the next chapter uses. And knowing exactly where it lands in your chart changes how you move through the next several months. If this reading named something real, if any of it was yours, come find me. The link is in the description. So drop in the comments, tell me what is still standing, not the hardest part of the last several months, what survived it. Because that is what this reading is about. I will see you in the next one.